It's 5 o'clock, Wednesday, August 3rd.
The ultimate greatness of this state is its capacity to rally and to speak as one.
They laid down their lives for our country. Today, a new way to support Minnesota soldiers and families when they need it most.
The TCO4 News starts right now.
Hello, I'm Dennis Doda.
And I'm Jeanette Trumpeter. Minnesota is taking action to support families of men and women who fight for our country on this a particularly deadly day in Iraq. 14 Marines were killed patrolling near the Syrian border. A roadside bomb exploded there. The Marines belong to the same Ohio battalion that lost 6 others in an attack on Monday. Mary Tan this afternoon introduces us to a new way to help the 5,000 Minnesotans currently serving our country.
The death, the wounding, the family separation, the economic hardships, and the devastating realities that those families have to live with who are paying the price of serving and serving all of us.
These are the images that are becoming all too familiar. Families and loved ones deeply affected. Folks like Marcia Hergott, whose son Jim died 2 years ago fighting in Iraq.
Jim would know this would be a hard thing for me to do today, but I'm doing it for all the Minnesotan families.
The Shakopee mom is helping unveil a fund drive for Minnesota troops and their families. She, along with business leaders and former politicians, are starting the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. It would give members of the military and their families grants to help with living or funeral expenses.
I would think it would be a wonderful thing to do. It's just, it's great that the rest of us in Minnesota say thanks to those very few people who do serve today.
The fundraising goal is $10 million. If that's achieved, families could get grants between $500 and $10,000.
The fact is that a very, very small percentage of our population is bearing the danger and arduous burdens of those battles.
And this was the idea of Eugene Sitt, a Twin Cities businessman. He donated $1 million of his own money for the cause. Now, you can contribute online. We've set up a link at WCCO.com. And Jeanette, 90% of all the money raised goes directly to those families.
So not a big overhead on administrative cost.
Not at all.
Great project, Mary. And WCCO is proud to be a partner in this project. We will bring you more on this story and some updates throughout the next few months.
Leading with more news, this is 5 Eyewitness News at 5.
This week, 23 Marines were killed in all in western Iraq. Insurgents believed to be responsible for one of the Marine attacks is also claiming to be holding another Marine hostage. These latest deaths remind us all of the extreme sacrifice made by the U.S. military and their families. Well, Tom Hauser is here now to tell us about a new effort to honor that sacrifice. Tom?
Yeah, Kristen, about 5,000 Minnesotans have served in Iraq and Afghanistan since 2001, and now there is a bold effort underway to raise millions of dollars to help support the state's military men and women and their families. The daily images of war in Iraq get beamed back to this country every day. For the families of the soldiers back home, it can be agonizing, especially during a week when there are reports of so many casualties.
It's appropriate that we are here today not only to pay tribute to them, but tribute to all the Minnesotans who served.
Former Senator Rudy Boschwitz is among the leaders of an effort to raise $10 million for a Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. The goal is to provide cash grants to all Minnesota military personnel who serve in a combat zone. The biggest grants will go to those who are wounded or the families of soldiers who are killed.
It isn't compensation, it's thanks. And the money happens to be one of the ways we can say thanks.
General John Vesey is a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who's lending his support to the fundraising effort along with some former governors. Marcia Hergott of Shakopee appreciates what they're trying to do from a unique perspective. Her son, Army Private Edward Hergott, was the first Minnesotan killed in Iraq back in 2003. What would he be thinking about what you're doing to kind of carry on his memory?
Way to go, Mom. That's what he would say.
Well, way to go to all of these organizers. It is a lofty goal. They admit that raising $10 million won't be easy, but a local investment firm has already donated $1 million to get things started. Now they hope other corporations and thousands of individual Minnesotans will donate whatever they can. Live in St. Paul, Tom Hauser, 5 Eyewitness News.
The chance to say thanks.
This is going to help the injured soldiers.
To Minnesota soldiers and their families.
An unprecedented fund drive aims to raise millions of dollars for Minnesota military members and their families. As KARE 11's John Croman reports, it's a way to say thank you.
He's gone from our family, but he was doing what he was there to do.
It was Independence Day just over 2 years ago when Army Private Edward Jim Hergott became the first Minnesota soldier claimed by the war in Iraq. Since then, many others have died, been wounded, or at least had their lives turned upside down.
The fact is that a very, very small percentage of our population is bearing the danger and arduous burdens of those battles. It's indeed fitting that the rest of us find a way to say thanks.
This morning, a bipartisan collection of Minnesota power brokers came together to launch the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, a thank you effort that goes beyond words.
The grants will be an embodiment of the Minnesota values, appreciating fellow citizens who are giving us the freedom and the security that we enjoy.
The fund, started with $1 million donation from Twin Cities businessman Gene Sitt, has a $10 million goal. Organizers plan to award grants of $10,000 to the families of home state soldiers killed in action, and up to $10,000 for those injured in a combat zone. Anyone can donate at TCF banks across the state or through a series of upcoming fundraisers.
Today's effort is one that pushes aside the politics of war and focuses on the humanness of war.
20 years old, he had just turned 20, and he wanted to go to school to become a cop.
A mother who understands sacrifice more than most says Army Private Jim Hergott would approve.
He would thank you, and we thank you, our family. Thanks.
With producer Dana Theed, John Croman, KARE 11 News.
Any Minnesota soldier who served or is serving overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan is eligible for a grant from the fund. The money should begin going out late this year. Now, to apply or learn more about the program, log on to KARE11.com and click on the featured links.
You're watching the 10 o'clock news.
It's not about supporting or not supporting the war. It's about saying thanks to those who serve.
A new fund has been set up to help Minnesota soldiers and their families. The Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund has donation boxes in more than 100 TCF banks statewide. Organizers hope to raise $10 million by the end of the year.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more.
Sheila Ray Charles, the daughter of Ray Charles, joined military families in Loring Park this morning to say thank you to the men and women serving in our nation's armed forces. Money raised by today's Military Appreciation Walk goes toward grants for Minnesotans who have served in the Iraq War. Also, a very special tribute today for Minnesotans who've served in the war. Hundreds of people laced up their shoes and walked the streets of downtown Minneapolis this morning. The Military Appreciation Walk raised money to provide grants to those who've served in the war. Sheila Ray Charles, the daughter of Ray Charles, even joined the military families in that event. Minnesota soldiers now in places like Iraq and Afghanistan are grateful for another huge fundraising effort here in Minnesota. Tom Hauser talked to one of those soldiers via satellite from Baghdad.
We've been following the story of Colonel Joe Repia over the past year. At the age of 58, he re-enlisted in the military so he could serve his country in Iraq. And now he wants to thank Minnesotans for supporting a special fundraising effort to help military families here in the state. The fight against the insurgency continues in Iraq every day. Firefight after firefight, block after block. But one Minnesota soldier says the American news media doesn't tell the whole story.
They constantly, hone in on bad news. And there's so much good that's going on over here. I could spend hours talking to you about it, and will when I get home.
I interviewed Colonel Joe Repia via satellite from Camp Victory in Baghdad, where he now serves with the 101st Airborne. We've documented his remarkable return to active duty at the age of 58, something he's reminded of often.
Well, for an old guy, I'm doing pretty good. A lot of people make jokes about the fact that I'm about to turn 60, but you know, you get a lot of jokes about drawing your Social Security check.
Repia says the troops are familiar with the protests going on back home, including Cindy Sheehan's anti-war efforts. But he says the Minnesota soldiers are also aware of Minnesota's Military Appreciation Fund, a statewide effort to raise money for military families back home.
It's tremendously important because it really boosts the morale of the soldiers over here, knowing that this is the first state in the nation to put together an appreciation fund like Minnesota has.
That was Tom Hauser reporting. Tomorrow, the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund is sponsoring a 5K walk at Loring Park in downtown Minneapolis. Go to KSTP.com for more information. A group raising money for Minnesota's military families sponsoring a 5K walk tomorrow in Loring Park. It's the Military Appreciation Fund, and one soldier tells us their support is very important.
It really boosts the morale of the soldiers over here, knowing that this is the first state in the nation to put together an appreciation fund like Minnesota has.
For more information on the walk, log on to KSTP.com. Click on As Seen on 5.
Well, today Minnesotans took to the streets to raise money and say thanks. Hundreds of folks were in downtown Minneapolis for the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Walk. Walkers came from all over the state to raise money and say thank you to the men and women protecting our country.
In an effort just to say thanks for wearing a uniform, thanks for being there. The big goal is to create an awareness among the citizens of the state and allow the citizens to participate, to be part of saying thanks.
Now, all of the money they raise will provide grants to Minnesotans who served in the War on Terror.
Today, Minnesotans took steps to thank our military service members. Hundreds of people took part in this military appreciation walk in Minneapolis today. Participants came from all over Minnesota to raise money and say thanks to those protecting our country.
In an effort just to say thanks for wearing a uniform, thanks for being there. The big goal is to create an awareness among the citizens of the state and allow the citizens to participate, to be part of saying thanks.
All of the money raised goes to grants for Minnesotans who have served in the War on Terror. Right now, Minnesotans are walking to say thank you to our troops fighting the war on terrorism. It's all part of the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Walk. And our Maya Nishikawa joins us now live from Loring Park, where the walk just got underway. Perfect weather for all of this, huh, Maya?
Oh, it is a gorgeous day out here, Terry, and they are still getting ready for the walk. You can see a large crowd gathering behind in the park, and they are getting ready for that 5K, and of course, hoping to raise a lot of money to help military families. And joining us now is Skip Krozik, who is one of the founders of Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. Tell us, Skip, why did you get this effort together?
Well, we looked at in recent lights of what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the troops going overseas. We felt we needed to say thanks to those men and women in a uniform. We wanted to be nonpartisan. We're not pro-war, anti-war. We want to say thanks to the men and women that wear the uniform of our country.
And this money will go to the families as in the form of grants. I hear you have a $10 million goal.
We have a $10 million goal. We went public on August 3rd, and we're already 20% of the way there. And on November 11th, we'll be having a large appreciation dinner where Senator McCain will be showing up as our guest speaker.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about the organization, and we also want to introduce you to some two very special people. Lois Hyde and Patty Keith both have sons in the military right now. Lois, tell us a little bit about what this effort means to you and why you're here.
I think it's particularly meaningful because our sons have had great support from their friends and families and our churches, but this really shows the depth of support with the people of Minnesota. And it is very, very heartwarming to see the turnout, and just the overall effort has been tremendous.
And they're saying maybe they'll have 700 people out here today. Patty, how does that make you feel?
Really good. I feel like Lois. It's a great support.
Your sons too. Yes. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. And if you are interested in coming out and participating in the walk, even if you miss the walk that starts in just a little while here, the 5K around Loring Park, they are going to have activities here in Loring Park till 1 o'clock. And of course, they're always happy to have those donations, Terry.
Absolutely. And let's hope they have a huge turnout as well. Thanks, Maya.
And in Minneapolis, a walk and a raffle honoring Minnesota troops and their families. About 800 people gathered at Loring Park to support the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. That provides money to Minnesotans who have served in the war on terror.
Here in Minnesota, a walk sponsored by the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund raised money on Saturday to help support the families of soldiers back home. This week, I talked to one Minnesota soldier who said those efforts are deeply appreciated. Colonel Joe Repia of Egan is probably the only member of the military serving in Iraq who re-enlisted in his late 50s. After several months of training at Fort Campbell in Kentucky, Repia is now serving in Baghdad with the 101st Airborne.
Well, for an old guy, I'm doing pretty good. A lot of people make jokes about the fact that I'm about to turn 60, but you know, you get a lot of jokes about drawing your Social Security check. But you know, we have a mission here, and we're all pulled together. It's one big team, and we're making great strides to help these people out.
I spoke with Repia via satellite this week. He acknowledges the U.S. military and coalition forces still face a difficult fight against insurgents. But after 3 months in the battle zone, he says it seems the national media tends to focus only on the negative coming out of Iraq.
I see visible progress every day, and I'm convinced that we're on the right track here, and these young men and women are not sacrificing for nothing. They are rebuilding the Middle East, and I'm very proud of them.
Repia says the military men and women in Iraq are aware of peace protests back home, including Cindy Sheehan's anti-war efforts.
We realize there's going to be protests, but you know, we have to also look at their motivation and what they're protesting about, and it's more political than it is anything else.
The other Minnesota soldiers he encounters are also aware of the military appreciation effort to raise money for military families back home.
It's tremendously important because it really boosts the morale of the soldiers over here, knowing that this is the first state in the nation to put together an appreciation fund like Minnesota has. Our business community coming together with our local politicians and others within the community to show appreciation for the sacrifices these wonderful men and women are making in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
And Colonel Repia will be able to take a short leave later this month to attend his daughter's wedding back here in Minnesota. Then he'll be back to Baghdad. If you'd like to donate to the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund, you can find a link at KSTP.com.
Also making news tonight, Arizona Senator John McCain is in town on this Veterans Day, and he's helping to raise money for soldiers who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's headlining a dinner tonight at the Minneapolis Hilton. It's expected to bring in about $500,000 from Minnesota's Military Appreciation Fund. The fund was unveiled back in August and has collected already more than $3 million.
And one of the most popular politicians in America will be in the Twin Cities tonight. Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona, a former POW, here to support the Minnesota's Military Appreciation Fund. It's a program that provides cash awards to soldiers returning home.
Well, the nation is remembering America's veterans who served in wars past. While Veterans Day ceremonies are planned across the country, a dinner for the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund is scheduled for tonight in St. Paul. Arizona Senator John McCain is the event's keynote speaker. In tonight's event, the fund has raised more than $3 million for Minnesota soldiers and their families.
On this Veterans Day, thoughts turn to the soldiers who have fought for this country and those currently in combat overseas. President Bush used the holiday to defend the reasons for going to war in Iraq. And tonight, KARE 11's Joe Fryer sat down with Senator John McCain in Minneapolis to find out if McCain agrees with the Commander-in-Chief.
Present. When November 11th arrives,
this is Veterans Day.
You can count on events like this in cities big and small across the country. Here in Minnesota, one event was big enough to draw a big name.
I've been privileged to serve in the company of heroes.
Arizona Senator John McCain, a former POW, was the keynote speaker at a dinner for the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, a nonprofit group that gives cash grants to all soldiers who've served in combat since 9/11.
It's really a remarkable testimony to the love and affection that the people of Minnesota have for the men and women who serve.
His appearance in Minnesota comes just hours after the president's stop in Pennsylvania. Here, President Bush strongly defended the war and attacked Democrats who questioned his use of pre-war intelligence.
While it's perfectly legitimate to criticize my decision or the conduct of the war,
It is deeply irresponsible to rewrite the history of how that war began.
We know that intelligence was misused. The real question now, whether this was done intentionally or whether it was done accidentally.
McCain feels the president's points are legitimate.
The Democrats who voted for the war had the same information basically that he did.
But McCain does think changes in Iraq are needed. He says a major problem is that U.S. forces sometimes enter a place, kill insurgents, then leave, opening the door for more insurgents.
We've got to take control of a place, get rid of the insurgents, and create an environment that we expand all the time where people can live in security. And
McCain says the U.S. is making progress in Iraq, but the next 6 months are critical. He thinks the military needs more of certain kinds of troops like translators and special operations. By the way, if you want to know more about the organization that brought McCain to town tonight, go to KARE11.com and click on featured links. Frank and Julie.
Thanks, Joe.
Arizona Senator John McCain was in town tonight speaking to a group raising money for soldiers. In its 3 months of existence, the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund has already raised $3 million. The money will be given to Minnesota military personnel and their families who have served in a combat zone as a way to say thank you. McCain says that this is the best place to be on Veterans Day.
Get emotional too easy and sometimes lose my composure because of the incredible bravery and magnificence of these people and their families.
Senator McCain is a former POW. He says finishing the job correctly in Iraq is more important than Vietnam.
Hi, my name is Aaron.
Hi, my name's Mike.
Will.
Hi, my name is Tracy.
I'm from Minneapolis. I'm from Arden Hills. This is my home.
Hi, my name is Nate.
I'm from North Branch. I'm a father.
I'm a brother. I'm a mother.
I'm a neighbor. I'm your friend.
Minnesota soldiers come from all walks of life. Let them know you appreciate their sacrifice. Go to WCCO.com and post your message of thanks. Sometimes the smallest words are the most powerful. The Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, proudly sponsored by WCCO-TV.
All afternoon, troop deployment ceremonies have been taking place around the state. Hundreds of Minnesota National Guard soldiers based in these 7 cities are getting ready to serve in Iraq. They'll go first to Mississippi for training. And this is part of the Guard's largest overseas deployment since World War II. We'll take you to one of these ceremonies tonight at 10 o'clock. More departure ceremonies will be held tomorrow in Moorhead and Bemidji. If you'd like to show your appreciation for the soldiers' sacrifices, go to WCCO.com and click Community. We'll link you to the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. It's been created to give grants to military families for living or funeral expenses.
Tonight, a Minnesota group is doing what it can to thank military men and women for their service.
And we're here because of your injury and action to present you with a little gift from the people of Minnesota.
Tech Sergeant Michael Humeni got a $2,000 check from the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund. Humeni was hit twice by roadside bombs. He says finances are a big worry for soldiers in Iraq. Michael's wife sold his car while he was gone.
We owe these people a big vote of thanks for the sacrifices that they're all making.
The Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund has already raised $3 million to give grants to Iraq vets and families. They're looking to raise $7 million more. There's a fundraising dinner next Friday night hosted by Arizona Senator John McCain and our own Paul Douglas. To find out more about the Military Appreciation Fund, log on to WCCO.com and click on Community.
You remember how it was when the end came in Europe, and then again on VJ Day. You remember how it was when the boys began coming home in '45. Parades, cheers, backslapping. Nothing's too good for our boys. Thanks, fellas, for a tough job well done.
After every war, we've done things differently. We're learning from our past. One Vietnam-era vet shared that in 35 years, there have only been 2 people that have said, thank you.
If something happens, if you leave somebody behind, you don't leave anybody behind. You make sure everybody's accounted for.
You learn how to do stuff, and when you're disabled and you can't do it, you learn it fast.
My dad's a police officer, and my grandpa was in the military. My best friend was in the Marines. When I heard the word about Iraq and everything else, my goal to him was I was going to join because I didn't want him to go over Iraq by himself.
Yeah, I believe there is a need for a private organization, private funding to help out soldiers and families that are injured while they're in Iraq.
The biggest hardship for us was after I got injured. I spent 2 months in the hospital in Fort Lewis, Washington, and my wife had to leave work to come out there and be with me. She was with me the whole time.
There's so many soldiers, active, discharged, and disabled, that for some reason or another have missed out on the ceremonies, the awards, the validation that each and every soldier so richly deserve. The thing that you're doing, this recognition to these soldiers, is unprecedented. The people of Minnesota have raised the bar. Let's see if the rest of the states can accept this challenge to thank their hometown heroes too.
Not being able to work, not being able to function with 2 arms. My arm goes numb daily. I have pain spurts down my arm. And coming home, you know, I still get respect here. It's just, I can't function. Can't work. Can't do anything. And it's hard, but you gotta learn to live with what you got.
Keep up the support. It goes miles over here. Hope to be home soon.
The grant you've offered to service members is greatly appreciated. It's always wonderful to hear that folks back home have us in their thoughts.
I'll feel selfish if I fill out this application. I know there are so many others here doing a tougher job than I am. It brings tears to my eyes whenever a complete stranger says thank you. I never knew there were so many great people out there who care so much.
The time apart. The time apart's really hard. She had to raise both of the boys by herself and go to school full time, so.
Where I got hit a lot harder than most people because I had a construction company before I left. You know, I did, you know, lose the company, obviously, you know, which had it for 3 years and was pretty successful. And, you know, just over that hump, if anybody who runs a small business knows what that first couple of years means.
The question that I think Eugene Sitt and the organization is trying to answer is, what is it that we as Minnesotans can do to pitch in?
And my main goal is possibly to start working full-time in February if I have my surgery soon. And the only reason why I can actually work full-time is because my friend, the one who's a Marine, his uncle is opening an armored car business. He offered me a job right away. He said, I know you're injured, I know you're disabled, you want to work for me. And most people won't do that.
Whatever our views now about what we should be doing or how we should do it, there should be no disagreement whatsoever in terms of our respecting and wanting to support and appreciate these young men and women.
When my grandma told me about the Thank Minnesota Troops thing, that was probably the biggest thing right there for me, is that gave me hope and everything that Minnesota actually cares.
What is it that we as citizens can do to connect with you who are abroad, putting your life on the line for our well-being? The most obvious way is to say
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your hard work and being away from your families. We really appreciate everything you do for us.
God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any little thing counts, just sending a letter and anything, sending a package, a letter, and I know they appreciate it a lot. So just at this point, we just need to show them that we support them.
Pick out one guy, one girl, and make them feel that there's one person in America that cares enough to sit down and write them a letter. It makes a big difference.
Say thank you, you know, and you never know what they're going through when they come back. If you have a friend or anybody, you know, you just want to be there for them.
You know, you help them. You just, you know, whatever you see that needs done, because we are not going to ask for the help.
They may not talk about anything, but just so they know that you're there, you know, and show honor and respect when you're around them.
Even if you didn't witness combat and some of the horrific things going over there, the tremendous transition of coming back to this fast-paced environment where you haven't been a part of and trying to catch up and trying to make up for lost time. You know, it's definitely a stressful process.
Welcome home. Thank you so much for your efforts. Give you a lot of credit. You have a lot of strength.
Hi, this is Sean from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and come home safe and sound. God bless you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
When I was 2 years old, my father said, "Thanks, soldier." It's nothing new.
We got a real spirit out there now. Proud of them.
Just come out here to say thank you.
There is hope.
We all know that freedom isn't free, but not everyone pays the same price. By their own choosing, our Minnesota military families are shouldering a huge burden to protect us. Sadly, some have paid the ultimate price, while still others suffer from the wounds of war, while others sacrifice in so many other ways. Our peace and security here at home are enhanced because the men and women of our military confront the danger of terrorism overseas. We all benefit tremendously. Nothing makes me prouder as governor or as a Minnesotan than the courage and skill of Minnesota's Guard, Reserve, and active duty personnel. Some of the greatest days for me as governor have been spent with our military families here and overseas. For many Americans, the memory of September 11th is fading, and the struggles in Afghanistan and Iraq are minute-long stories on the evening news. But for our military families, the war on terrorism is on their minds every hour of every day. For those who are in harm's way and for those who wait in anguish here at home, we must provide our undiminished support. These brave Minnesotans, these brave Americans deserve our heartfelt thanks and our faithful prayers. That's why, in an attempt to remind us of their sacrifices, Minnesota will soon issue new Support Our Troops license plates that will hopefully expand our visible and financial support for our veterans and military families, just as all of you are doing this evening. My thanks to Gene Sitt and his team of distinguished citizens for putting this evening together, and to a great American hero, Senator John McCain, for taking the time to share a personal message with all of you. You give us all a chance to say to Minnesota's military families what's truly in our hearts. We honor you. We thank you. We will support you no matter what. We know your sacrifice is making life better for us all. Thank you. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless this great nation with the men and women who serve in our United States military.